Okay, so in this video, I'm going to walk you through what I did to take one of my clients from 51 new all-on-4 appointments to 139 all-on-4 appointments month to month. So this is a 30-day change. So if you have a lot of new patient calls and you feel like you're not getting enough of those to book or to show up for their appointments, this video is for you. I'm going to guide you through step by step exactly how I did that. Let's dive in. Step one is your call recordings. All of your new patient phone calls should be recorded and archived so that they can be reviewed. This is by far one of the easiest steps to implement, but a lot of practices are not doing it. And what you really need to do is just have the call recordings and listen to them. Like if you disregard everything else in this video, just listening to the call recordings as a team is going to book you some new appointments. So you want to make sure you're recording all of the new patient calls. So make sure that not one team member is taking them on some phone that's not recorded, or inbound calls are recorded, but outbound are you need to get all of them because you're missing opportunity if you're not. Then one thing you're going to do is you're just going to scroll through and you're going to look at duration. Any new patient call that's less than 5 minutes is bad. I don't care what anyone says. If you can't speak for more than 5 minutes, especially with an all-in-4 appointment, it's not going to be good. That appointment usually no shows, or they come in and they waste your time. Also, more than 15 minutes is bad. If your team is extending out the amount of time they're speaking on the phone and that call is dragging on and on and on, uh, that's a sign that your team is very inefficient on the phone. So you need to correct that. But the sweet spot you're looking for is between 5 minutes and 15 minutes on the phone call. If you're seeing that, then you know your team is within spec. If not, then you need to correct this, and I'll show you how to do that further down. So one common misconception is that you have to listen to all the calls that are coming into your system. You actually don't. You do need to QC a sizable portion, right? So 15 to 20% of your calls is what you need to do. In the grand scheme of these calls, it's not a lot, especially if your team is on the short side. So even if it's less than 15 to 20%, grab 4 or 5 calls every week and just play them and just listen to them. And that brings me into the next thing I did, which is I always play call recordings during the live training, right? It's one thing I listen and I know, okay, I need to correct this with Sally. I need to fix this with Steve. But we need to play this in the live recording because when people hear their voice, they'll go, oh my gosh, did I really say that? And they'll start correcting some of these errors on their own. That's why if you take these call recordings and you play them in front of your team, you're going to get some huge ROI on that because even if you don't know how to train them, they're going to train themselves and they're going to fix it. So this is the first step right here. Even if you don't do any of these other things, I'm sure you will see an increase in appointments if you just record all the calls and QC a few of them and play them in live training. But if you want to get the maximum amount of new appointments, then you do need some tracking. All right, so here's what I track. I track the date of the call and the appointment date for all the calls, right? So we have a spreadsheet. Okay, this call was taken on this date. The appointment was set for that date. What that allows us to do is it goes back and calculates show rates. It lets us calculate the next thing, which is who's performing by what. But we need to know how many appointments were booked on each day and where those were for. If you're using Dental Intel or some other softwares, you might be able to bring that together. I have some Google Sheets that work pretty well for this too. So you're going to want to keep track of show rates for each team member. So one of the things that I always see with my clients is we start tracking show rate and one person starts doing better than the other, right? Sally's show rate is great. Everyone Steve books doesn't show up, right? And when you see that, it will be a cue when you're actually QCing the call recordings to go back and to know, okay, so I need to listen to more of Steve's calls because they're not showing up, right? So maybe you weight this 15 to 20% more towards Steve, right? So what I did is I went in and I found, okay, here are the people who are underperforming. Let's correct it. You also want to be tracking in every call. The team should take notes about the patient's common concern. We need to know if the patient cares more about the cosmetics, if they're in discomfort, if they're looking for lifestyle changes. You want to track those consistently. One, it's going to give you some really good information about what your patients want. That's useful for when they show up. But number two, it reveals how well your team is doing on the phone. If you have one team member who's very, very surface level in all their notes and all their common concerns notes, and one that goes deep, okay, we need to fix this and we need to encourage this person to continue. So again, I track the date and time of the appointments. I use it to calculate the show rate for each team member, and I always track the common concerns so we know what is going on. Okay. When it comes to training, here's how I implemented the training at this practice. Weekly calls, we all get on Zoom every single week to train. This is required. People are not allowed to like skip or not be there or hang out with their camera off. This is all live. We need to be ready to roll and to train. If you're not training regularly, don't expect your team to get any better, right? So during this training, we role play, right? We role play full length calls, and we also role play snippets, different pieces of calls, right? Like if you have a team that's doing a lot of outbound, that first 5 seconds of the call is really crucial. And I walk the team through that. And then we also just look for sticking points, right? Like different team members have trouble with different areas. And so I'll take the team and I'll say, okay, you're really struggling with handling this objection. Let's say it again. Let's say it again. Let's say it again. Okay, now you're good. Do you feel comfortable with that? Yes. Okay, perfect. Let's go deploy that on the call. Throughout the week, we stay in touch via group chat, right? If I'm just making touch points with the team once a week, but we're not in touch throughout the week, then they start to slip back into some bad habits, right? So I always make sure that I'm staying on top of communication with the team members, especially the ones that are doing a lot of dials throughout the week, so that they have continuous feedback and accountability, right? So if a day goes by and not a lot of appointments are booked, they're getting a message like, hey, what's going on, right? And that constant feedback keeps them on track. Lastly, scripting. This is really important for the training. I won't go into the gold standard checklist here because I have another video on that. If you want to check it out, I will link it in the description. But this is important, right? There is a standard structure that I measure all the calls against, right? So in this checklist, I go through, okay, did you do it or did you not? And it's really simple. And after a while, the team gets used to it. It's not brutal. People don't feel bad. It's just like, hey, you didn't tell them how great the doctor is, or you failed to ask 3 questions about their situation, right? They either get it or they don't. So we use this scripting to train the team on what to say. And once they know what to say, then this goes immediately back into the calls that they're taking. So again, these are the 3 steps. If you want to check out more of the scripting, I have that in another video. But again, even if you implement a few of this, I really think recording and playing those recordings is going to be massive. Even if you're not training every week, which you should be, even if you're not tracking, which you should be. But if you implement these 3 steps, I'm sure you'll see some similar results and some good upticks.